Welcome to PolyCast, a civilization podcast focused on game strategy.
DanQ.
Makahlua.
TheMeInTeam.
QNL.
With guest co-host
Raskolnikov.
Are you talking to us about your portfolio? Tell us more. Talk old to me.
Whoa, you wait a minute. You like that? You like when I talk?
Suddenly Dan's identity will be thefted.
This is episode 111, and we are joined by, first, Dan Quick.
Did you know that if you say the episode number backwards, it does not matter?
Philip Bellew, TheMeInTeam.
I'll send your units back to your Civ in a box.
Makahlua.
Reporting to you from Snowpocalypse 2011. Been inside for a week. Go crazy? Don't mind if I do.
And our guest co-host, RRRaskolnikov.
Hello, everyone.
And, sorry about that. And, I knew I was going to do that. And myself, Lisa Fang, or QNL.
Yeah, we'll just mispronounce your username at least.
I know, my own username.
Yeah, so this is Lisa LNQ, and is that wrong? Oh, my bad.
No, it's not a palindrome. What's the episode?
If you mess up my name, just go with me and cheese or something. It works as well.
It's thematically appropriate.
Absolutely.
No, your team in me the, actually. See, So it doesn't work with Mackies, though, unless it's...
Just start with Lua and then go with something else.
Yeah, Kaluamach.
Yeah, Kahlua. I mean, how could that be wrong?
Yeah, I could use some right now.
Yeah.
That would definitely raise the quality of the show. I recommend it.
Anything would raise the quality of this show. And, that's one of those internal thoughts again. Whoops. Under forum talk, resources need to be fixed and adapt with the timeline, talking about Civilization 5. This thread was started by Shadow Badass. And no, I just choose this topic in order to be able to say that. I may say it a few more times, but that has no bearing on anything. We all know horses become useless after tanks, the automobile tech, is discovered. Depending upon your theory or how you play, you might think horses are useless altogether. I think horses should go from being a strategic resource to a luxury resource, or have as both. I think the happiness for each luxury resource should be a regressive down to 1 happiness, and then 1 happiness for each additional. So if I had 6 silk, 2 gold, and 1 cotton, the silk I would get 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and 1 happiness for each resource. The gold would get 5 and 4 happiness, and so on and so forth, quote unquote. I think this way people would war over luxury resources more, especially early game. It just seems pointless to me that I have 5 gold resources, I use 1, trade 2, and waste 2. This also makes resources more valuable in certain situations. Would you rather keep your second resource for happiness or trade it for gold? Quote unquote. I'll start off by saying that with the suggestion about horses going from being a strategic resource to a luxury resource, or having as both, I'm going to disagree with that suggestion.
I don't agree with this model in general. Like, not only is he suggesting the absolute amount of happiness available in the game to be dropped significantly, because right now you can usually trade your luxury resource for another luxury resource if you want to do so, and certainly you can conquer more. So you're going to get less total happiness from this model, but I don't see how this is going to cause more wars. Like, you get diminishing returns from luxury resources under this model. So it's kind of like he's arguing against himself a little bit and not realizing it.
Yeah, because we already get diminishing returns from luxury items.
Yeah, so why go to war if it's only going to be worth 1 happiness? I mean, there's other reasons to go to war, certainly, but you would not then go to war for the resources.
I know that he talks about also with regards to horses going from a strategic to a luxury resource, and it got me thinking about that. I mean, in a way, horse can be a luxury resource only in the sense that with regards to connecting it to the circus that you can build. If your city has horses or ivory near them, you can build circus and then you can get +3 happy. I think it was also suggested in this thread about maybe having the ability for iron to be able to do that. So I have no issue with that. We could get into whether or not, for instance, beyond, let's say you had 2 horse resources, could it be then that in the 2 cities, one city has 1 horse resource, one has another? Do we want to be able to say that that's cumulative? So you could have a circus in one city and that gets you 3, and then the next city gets you 3? Or do we want to be able to say that it doesn't get you any other happiness, you just get the 3 absolute? Or this thread also talks about, someone had a formula, I believe it was Valkyron, about that you still get happiness, but it's only a fraction for those beyond a particular 1.
Now that I like you have 5 gold, so you get diminishing returns on the gold, but not necessarily diminishing returns on additional luxury resources that are not gold. That would make sense, and it would at least provide you some incentive to hang on to it as opposed to trading it right now, because the original poster, I don't think in this game understands the value of trading luxury resources, at least on difficulties where the AI has any money at all. And you usually don't end up with unused luxury resources. You can usually find a significant use for them. And having alternative use to that might matter. It might be significant to you. Maybe you want that diminishing return happiness from the gold that's still only like 3 or 2. That would be a good thing to add depth in the game. Unlike the diminishing return on having luxury resources in the absolute sense, putting it on, comparing between the luxury resources would be actually a good thing for strategy.
Mackie, what topic shall we go on to next?
How about this idea that cities are too strong? I mean, okay, when we get into the industrial area, maybe they are getting a little bit ridiculously strong since they gave them a little buff, but they kind of need the buff early on, otherwise that's why we were running over everything with horsemen before a couple of patches.
Yeah, I quite agree. I think it forces the player to go into deeper gameplay, to overthrow the additional strengths. I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, initially the city attack bothered me, way back, many months ago, because they did seem a little bit strong. It was something to get used to, but I think the patch to change them to be stronger was a good thing for the game. I'm still looking for a civilization version that has perfect balance between victory conditions such that any of them are competitive in multiplayer. And even now, although multiplayer is kind of shot, I don't think you'd see that. I think military would still be the way to go, even in Civ 5 at this moment, which would suggest that defenses still aren't up there. But it's a tough balancing act, because you don't want everybody not playing war ever.
Yeah, but I think it's comes from the nature of the multiplayer game. You can't all diplomacy actions are to the fact that you don't want the other player to win. It's not like the AI. I don't think the gameplay can change that.
No, I see what you're saying. That's true. That's true to an extent.
But I think this change is good in the sense at least it prevents early rushes and it makes, in my opinion, at least the game more enjoyable.
And it's not like you can't take cities in their current form if you plan ahead. Any type of tech lead will easily capture a city, even contemporary units. Like, say you're attacking a 20-some strength city with longswords. As long as you have 3-4 longswords, or 2 to 3 longswords and some good cover, some siege weapons hitting the city or whatever, you can generally take a city, even the capital. So it's not like they're unstoppable or anything. But sure, like in the opening post, if you're attacking with full 4 warrior units, but it's not, and it's a reasonably developed city, you're not going to take the city. Your warriors were not really designed to take cities. I mean, have you ever tried to take a city with 4 warriors in Civ 4, or even 12 warriors in Civ 4? That doesn't usually go well. There's a reason. They're meant for early defense, not attacking people usually.
Yeah, even if you were able to surround the city so every adjacent tile had a warrior on it and you attacked all on the same turn, really, really, really early on, maybe you'd get lucky, but then also depending on the difficulty level too. But just being able to the rush and to have a little bit of planning involved. When I was reading this thread, I thought about Civilization Revolution, which is kind of the other end right now, even as compared to PC titles and Civ, where it is possible, if the city is undefended, then you could, and you had a settler, for instance, you could walk in with the settler and the city is toast. Which I think it works for that game, but I do like how that cities are stronger now, and it makes you think not only about how many units I have, and we also got into in Civilization 4 what types of units you had, where that combination was important to have some melee and siege and maybe some mounted, but also getting you to be thinking about that I need to be able to move in as many as possible on a particular turn. And it helps with those cities that are perhaps new, but maybe they're surrounded by, some mountains or some peaks or some ocean that just makes it that much more difficult to get the units in there. It reflecting some more realism, and also works in gameplay as well.
Yeah, I think it's both more realistic, like there were battles, but also siege and the exchange brings the game towards this way, and I think it's more realistic and more enjoyable to play. Yeah.
It brought up the difference between playing against the AI and the multiplayer.
Yeah.
Strategist 83 says this discussion is ridiculous anyway, since you guys are clearly judging the balance on versus AI play. Some of you probably haven't even tried the game online. Cities are too strong and more problematically become strong immediately after being built. And the focus is on AI, but it's not just on the AI as well. As Aftershafter pointed out, it's on everybody. The city strength is on everybody, so it's not just that, the AI only gets this advantage in terms of your city strength. So do the human players as well. So if you've got human and AI, or just human versus human, in this particular respect, we're all on the same level, and this is a good thing.
Yeah, and this change kind of makes it a little bit harder for, one of my least favorite situations in Civ 4 was having a couple good players on the map, but not many, and, my opponent, or let's say there's 3 good players on the map out of 7, and I happen to spawn next to one of the other ones, so we're relatively even, and then the third player gets spawned over by the super noob or something, and just trashes him instantly, and there's nothing we can do to react, and all of a sudden we have a monster on our hands that would be actually difficult to do anything against, even if we combine forces, just because, the guy rushed the other guy out in like 2 seconds at the start of the game. So it actually allows the diplomacy that Raz was mentioning to come into play a little bit more. And it's not like it's impossible to take cities, even in multiplayer. It's not, especially once you start involving navies and other things. It's not going to be impossible.
No, yeah, it takes a coordinated effort.
And to give credit where credit is due, this thread was started by Alia_12.
Yeah, oh no, we actually have to use tactics to take the cities instead of cheese rushing everything.
Now, Bomber Escort noted that the sad part is these new city defense changes are hard-coded and currently not accessible via the XML, which, as far as the modding aspect goes, if you really wanted to mod that and you're in a group of people and you really don't like this, then I can see the argument for making that accessible within the XML. But I like Ferensky's comment that until people are winning science, culture, or diplomatic wins in competitive multiplayer, I say cities aren't strong enough.
Yeah.
There you go.
One-liner for the win. FTW. Yeah. All right.
As Raz pointed out, though, I don't like that because people can always dogpile in multiplayer to prevent victories. So it's not something that can be quantified quite so easily.
It still makes a good one-liner, though, Phil.
Sure. I mean, we all love our one-liners, after all.
And it's even clean. Wow.
Nothing about a treaty in the pocket from Catherine? No, not so much. Yeah, I can use that. It's in the game. It's okay.
It is.
By the numbers, basically this is a thread started by Vivor. He prepared a chart here that essentially is sort of like the XML chart that you get in Civilization 4 that lets you know how each of the leaders act. And I was taking a look over it, and it seems the way it works is it runs from a scale of 0 to 10 or 1 to 10, and the higher the number for each value at the top, the more likely the AI is to go for that or to do that thing, whatever it is. Some interesting ones here. Gandhi's very high on nukes for some reason. Surprisingly, only about half of AIs are really geared towards pursuing victory with any sort of prioritization, which I find very unfortunate. Seriously, over half the AIs prioritize wonders more than winning the game. So that's kind of bad, but you can actually see which AIs will attempt to win, which won't, and how they'll try to do things here. So you can plan around it a little bit, and it's certainly a valuable resource. How much it translates to straight in-game play, I can't quite vouch for that yet. I have not tried out playing the game while referencing this, but it's a useful resource, and certainly listeners can check it out and see if it helps them while they're playing.
I'm still amused over here that on a scale of 1 to 10, Gandhi has a 12 in nukes. What? Makes no sense.
Yeah, I agree.
There's some speculation in the thread that somebody did it as a joke and then forgot to change it, or it was a typo or something. Maybe that was supposed to be a 1, but they hit the 2 as well.
That's interesting, especially with the Wonder column. You can see who the ones are always going to be building.
Yeah.
Gosh, I hope they're next to me.
No joke. It's a lot of score and benefit with that much investment, that's for certain. Just let the AI build the wonder. Maybe you can gift them some marble and then go take their cities. Yeah, that's good
stuff. Yes, please be building this faster so I can take you out that much more quickly.
And this is post-patch, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Just wanted to check.
I don't think he said, but I'm pretty sure it is. The thread is clearly post-patch when it was posted. So unless you picked it up before the patch, it should be all right.
Yeah.
Not a lot of loyalty. I think the highest number is a 7.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for. Only backstabbers.
Much to varying degrees.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. The only thing is that I don't really understand what some of these variables mean. I don't know what boldness means, really.
Which one? Gold?
Boldness. And under competitiveness. There's flavor and... Oh, wait, no, I just realized what air is. It's air units. Okay. Sorry, that confused me. Water connection. I don't know. That confuses me, too. I don't know what all these things mean.
Yeah, I'm not sure anybody but the designers know what every single one of those mean right now. And that was a problem in Civ 4 as well, figuring out what the XML values were tied to in-game and how much it made a difference. A lot of these values might be one way or the other, but for, for example, 90% of the game, you're not going to care what the AI's air value is because it's probably not calling on that variable at all since air isn't yet available.
Maybe the water connection has something to do with partially initial starting location or even their tendency to go out and explore and build naval units, because looking at the highest values here, like Elizabeth and Isabella and Askia of the Songhai.
Yeah, if I were to guess, that's their tendency to settle coastally, but you don't know.
I do find the there's actually under flavor there is a religion value.
I was about to point that out. Yeah, it's still left in there.
Yeah.
He references it to it all throughout the code. Not that I've dove through the code a lot. Whatever. Not that I've gone through the code a lot, but I've seen many comments from users who have done so that have found references to religion in multiple places.
So there's tile improvement and infrastructure separately, so I guess I'm assuming infrastructure is their construction of building tendency.
Yeah, city improvements. That's been how it is for a while.
Oh, interesting how the tile improvements, and naval tile improvements are actually noted separately. I guess it's because the naval tile improvements, of course. I guess our workers can't quite yet go onto the waters and start improving things.
Just turn into little boats. The AI will sell its soul to pillage your seafood. Wait, that was a different game.
There's a mobile column as well under flavor, and seeing as how the highest value I see on here is under Genghis Khan, or also tied with... Oh, no, it's a different column. Genghis Khan. Oh, and Alexander, too, so I guess maybe that has something to do with the mounted capabilities and the mounted preference.
Or just high movement units in general. I think they might call it mobile instead of mounted or horse units, so that these guys kind of go into tanks and more faster-moving units in the modern era as well. That would be my guess.
Okay.
Like they've got Bismarck flagged as the 7 for mobile.
Yeah, there you go. He's actually a pretty good unit spammer in this game, apparently. Well, he was in the last one as well. Actually. He was in the 30 unit prob tier, which is just behind the warmongering psychos in Civ 4. So he's always been a bit of a unit spammer.
The lowest value I see on here for anything is a 2.
No, I see 1.
There's a 1? Where's a 1?
Yeah, Moctezuma, Warmonger 8.
Because Monty loves warmongers.
Yeah, he loves it.
Oh, I see it.
So does Alex and Napoleon. Interesting.
Weird.
Oh, jeez. Mm.
At least that makes those particular topics easy to figure out.
I think my favorite heading is chattiness, actually.
Chattiness.
Also known as annoying you with pop-ups.
So, Catherine, Alexander,
It really is chatty.
and who else was 7? Oh, Ashikuti. Okay. And we also got Major Civ approach. Oh, and City-State approach as well.
Yeah, you have a good list there of who's more likely to go conquest and who's more likely to go buy them off.
Alexander is protective with city-states, which is quite good.
Yeah, well, it makes sense with his bonus.
Yeah. And Ramka also.
Even with Genghis Khan's bonus against attacking city-states, Monty still saw higher than or under conquest.
Oh, it's just how Montezuma is.
Your city-states, they look tasty. Nom.
Alright, so Lisa, what is our next topic?
Okay, we talk about promotions and units. They keep their unique abilities. So this thread was started by Nemesis 7884, and it goes like this. I read in several posts that sometimes unique units seem to keep their unique abilities and sometimes they do not. This seems to be very interesting and important, so I'm wondering if anyone can tell me about that. Does it only amount to special abilities like plus X% against Y, or also to general strength improvements, e.g. musketeers keep their plus 4 strength when upgrading to riflemen, etc.? So yeah, the answer to that question is that as of this patch, I believe, they do keep their unique units after promotion, which is nice because Civ 5, incorporates a lot more promotion than Civ 4 did. You can actually keep a unit, throughout the game and just upgrade them accordingly.
Well, I am afraid by the fact that maybe it brings in imbalance with the fact that earlier unique units have great advantages because then you can benefit from this promotion way longer. I don't know if it's clear.
Yeah. Well, there's a secondary thread that we have linked here that goes to Midgen, who started a reasonably in-depth analysis of each of the individual unique units, their strengths and potential problems with them. Just to give an example, he goes over the Jaguar Warrior and points out that if you manage to never get iron, then you actually cannot upgrade them ever. Whereas if you do, then you can pretty much have them for the majority of the game. So you have issues like that. But really the other issue is it's always been a problem with early units versus later units when it comes to uniques. They've never been balanced, that later uniques are so good that you might consider them comparable in utility to an earlier unique unit. It seems almost always that they just kind of chuck in unique units for flavor rather than worrying about balance, although certainly in Civ 5 the unique unit bonuses seem to be a little bit more important than in previous games for most uniques. Most.
Yeah, agree.
But I don't know. Their model of them keeping their abilities on upgrade, it has some strategic value to it. I'm not sure I'd want it removed. But certainly I want certain things looked at that he's mentioning in this thread. And it's a pretty lengthy thread, and it goes on to a second post. So I'd say it's probably better for the listeners to read it themselves as opposed to us reading out the entire thing on air. But it's a good post. It's worth checking out.
Yeah, it might be a little more interesting for us to read that as compared to, say, reading the Civ 5 manual. But yes, some things are better left read and not said. Ooh, now this is a news flash. I like to talk. But I like JP Bar 81's post, which I guess was copied from an earlier thread, an older thread that talked about this, not that I came across it. But in any event, this keeps it simple for me, and I think this is going to put me at odds with some people on the panel, but so be it. Special bonuses to unique units should only provide the bonus while units maintain their unique identity. If they're upgraded, these special bonuses should be removed. The unique represents a special era and unit to each civ, and their abilities shouldn't be applied to the whole span of the game. Also, some uniques are just simply stronger and don't have any unique abilities. When upgraded, they don't retain their higher strength, quote-unquote. And I'll also mention that was partially pointed out in Magin's secondary thread that, for instance, when he's talking about ranged units and he's talking about, the chariot archers, going to knights, the most obvious issue here is that chariot archers keeping their penalties when upgraded to knights. So we're not just talking about those things that are positive, but also those things that are negative that are being inherited. So let's just stop the madness right now, and once they're upgraded, the uniqueness, the good, the bad, the indifferent, the outright stuff, anything to do with the promotion is gone. If it's something that we want to be continuing on, then let's tie it to the unit specifically and not have it be a promotion, which is a separate issue, kind of, so to speak. But just leave the bonuses for that unit, and if they're upgraded, that era has passed, we've moved on.
I thought they patched out some of those negative abilities translating up. Like, I remember the artillery being upgraded to mobile artillery. At one point, still had to have the setup. I thought some of those things were removed. I'm not sure if that's the case now, but probably, I thought. So.
Well, that's progress then. Yeah, and if that's some, then there are still some of them.
But they're having the balance of uniques with higher raw strength as opposed to abilities. That, and having only one of those upgrades, that doesn't necessarily make it imbalanced. You can easily balance the game around the ability for some units to carry on their upgrades, their abilities through upgrades, whereas other units don't. You can balance that. Yeah. I'm not sure if it's the best model, but it adds a little bit to gameplay that you didn't see in previous versions, at least.
Yeah, I think when posters says that it can model also a military tradition into a civ, but it has to be balanced. I don't know. It appears like they did that without. They did that, and then they keep it in a later patch because it was cool. But we don't know if it was on purpose, But if balanced, it can be a good thing, yeah.
And you can call in serious questions of balance between unique units without having any abilities upgraded at all. Somehow I'm thinking that the abilities upgrade is not the issue here. When you're comparing things like, even post-patch companion cavalry to something like the Panzer, or, Immortals to the Panzer, anything early that gives a big return, you'd be hard-pressed for the Panzer to matter in the majority of games, where those early uniques tend to matter consistently.
I think just in part it's balance, but also it gives you some additional decisions to make with regards to, I could upgrade this unique unit, but if I know I'm going to lose these bonuses, is that actually going to, in fact, be an upgrade? If I really took advantage of my unique unit when it came about, and it has all of these promotions, and I look at, okay, this is what its strength is going to be, its combat, defense, movement, whatever combinations thereof. I guess maybe not so much movement, but other things in that respect, you may decide, no, I don't actually want to upgrade those because these ones that are particularly upgraded, I'm not going to be able to build them anymore, but they're in a position that they're actually just as well off, if not better, than something that could be upgraded or built new. So I'll use that gold for a new unit entirely, or I'll use it for something else completely, and just leave some of those unique units in the game rather than feeling like, oh, yes, let's go ahead and upgrade those units, so now they've kept all of their benefits plus the base value improvement of whatever unit they've now upgraded to.
Well, I do like Imagine's second post, in which he points out that during the tech tree, when you receive certain units, you usually receive the counter unit to the, following unit. His under the heading Pointy Sticks versus Speed Units, he says that it all seems rather slapped together without anyone stopping to look at the big picture. So the issue is that pikes are a prerequisite to knights, and the anti-tank gun comes before tanks are invented. But I think that it was always that way. That way in Civ
counter
4.
Units in Civ 4 are consistently available before the units themselves, or at the same time. They might have done that on purpose, for better or worse, I don't know, but that seems like it's been a consistent situation in the game, really as long as counter units have existed in the proper sense.
Yeah, that seemed purposeful.
Yeah,
and obviously back in Civ 3 you had defense values and attack values. It was a little bit different. You didn't have true counter units, quote unquote. But ever since Civ 4, they've put in counters ahead of time. I think that's to balance and not have somebody totally get steamrolled before they could react, I think.
I do like his point that, like the spearman, pikeman bonus can be pretty high versus mounted because it's way overpowered at 100%. Well, I don't know what he's saying about the whole the fact that hoplites can stand toe-to-toe with cavalry with fortified and rush terrain. That doesn't seem quite right to me. I mean, it's not like spearman versus tank, but
I'm not sure that advantage of retaining that particular unique unit for that long when you're facing units of that much farther down the tech tree, even with the bonuses that you can get to it as it is right now, to say that it's comparable that a hop would be going after a cavalry. I haven't seen that myself, but as Magin was pointing out, that does seem to be a bit on the extreme side.
I don't know. I think the pikeman units, or the anti-mounted in general, need their bonuses. Although the horseman was a little over-nerfed, I think they could have kept their strength closer to what it was, and just kept their weaknesses against cities in place like they have now. Anyway, they are, despite the fact that spears are strong against them, you could routinely beat spears, at least AI spears, using them just because of their mobility. You can hit and run, hit and run. And, without something that has a huge bonus against them, it would be very difficult to stop them at all, or inflict any actual casualties, because they could just run away after attacking you. And it would be hard to stick them in places where you could kill them instantly without them reacting.
Are you saying, having kept horsemen, like they were 12 strength and then they got down to 10, so...
Yeah, but make them pretty terrible against cities or something, or maybe make them 11 strength in what they are now, I don't know. It just seems like they were made to the point where they're even a little bit weak in the field now because of that. And I don't mean just weak in the field compared to other units, but like if you compare them to mounted from other eras, which did not take an absolute decrease in strength. Like, knights are still 18 strength, cavalry is still at 25, and they have all their mobility, they're just weaker against cities than they used to be. So they're otherwise as good as mounted ever was in the field. That's not true for a horseman. So I don't know. It seems like they were perhaps just hit a little bit too hard with the nerf bat, although I can see why they did it since it was the overwhelming strategy until it was done.
In the context of the greater picture, I can see that. I mean, if we're talking about knocking it down to 11 instead of 12, okay, so instead of a 20% reduction on its base strength, it's now 11%. But of course, we've also got the hit against the cities with it too. Okay, I'm okay with what they did with it. Maybe the other mounted units should have also been addressed as well.
I don't see mounted as a big problem right now anymore.
Let's inject some artificial controversy. You know what is overpowered? Scouts. They shouldn't be able to move. It's penalty movement at all. It's absolutely outrageous.
And you can keep that terrain move up by upgrading. Oh my god, it's ridiculous.
Oh wow, that is kind of ridiculous, actually.
Ridiculously fun.
I don't know. I would like to upgrade destroyers to missile cruisers. It just makes sense to me. There's no reason why you shouldn't be able to upgrade destroyers to missile cruisers. Not a lot of people get to that point in the game anyway, so it's maybe people overlook it, but I don't know.
Well, technically speaking, you could not upgrade destroyers to missile cruisers in Civ 4 either, technically. Because it was battleships that you upgraded. Do missile cruisers detect submarines? I've never actually built a missile cruiser, I do not believe. So that might be something useful to have from a destroyer.
Only destroyers can notice submarine, if I can correctly.
If that's how the mechanic is, then that gives you some incentive to keeping destroyers and makes it make slightly more sense. I still don't know why you wouldn't be able to do that upgrade just as an option, but whatever. Some minor justification there.
Yeah, no, missile cruisers can't see submarines.
Something that Magin said was negative defensive lancers. I've never actually used lancers extensively just for this reason, because if you try to attack a city with lancers, you can lose like almost a third of your overall health just from like one bombardment by a city, And if you happen to be in a bad place, you can get that twice from neighboring cities. And they are. I would much rather have something else, just because pikes are effective counter to both knights and lancers, and even cavalry sometimes.
Yeah, I think Civ always needs to have a couple black sheep units in there. You got some ironclads in Civ 4 or something. Maybe your seafood resources, but otherwise they're pretty trashy. Or, grenadiers in a lot of cases, although they can be good. Frequently they're not, because the opponent already has cavalry and you just can't do anything with them. And I think the Civ 5 Lancers fall into that category. You get these guys that they can't defend for anything, so you can't really use them offensively too effectively, because there's at least something that can hit them in most cases. And if you want to go strict defense, yeah, they can help, but if you're actually putting effort into strict defense, you can probably beat most of the things that attack you anyway. Not to mention that you are not guaranteed to be having masses of cavalry and cavalry alone on the defensive, especially now that cavalry cannot attack cities as effectively. So Lancers just they're kind of left in the cold there. And they're an option, but they don't seem to make a huge difference in the game for the vast majority of cases. It might be annoying if the AI surprises you with one or something like that, but when push comes to shove, they're just not that good.
Yeah, I wish we had something that was equivalent to Cuirassiers in the last game. And I feel like it was a good level unit, and I don't really know what the difference is between a Knight and a Lancer, although, I mean, there must be one. But, I mean, the difference between Cuirassiers and Cavalry makes sense, right? I mean, it's muskets to rifles.
Yes, so Lancer here, 4 movement, 22 combat. We mentioned the Cavalry at 25 combat, and 3 movements. Lancer is a little cheaper at 220 hammers as compared to 260. And if we compare that to the Knight, because the Lancer comes between the Knight and the Cavalry unit, that was 18 strength for the Knight and 3 movement, but only 150 hammers. So it's when they say it comes in between, it doesn't really feel like not only does it come in between, like in terms of the tech tree, but also kind of comes in between in terms of its actual strength and abilities as well. Plus, also with that additional movement as well is nice as well. It gets back to the Horseman movement level too.
Yeah, I mean, the trouble is the negative promotion that they have on defense, which I don't remember how much reduced that is, but I remember in Civ 4, it was only that, you wouldn't get any defensive bonuses, but you wouldn't actually have a negative effect for being mounted. Lancers just kind of suck in that regard, and it's especially easy to kill them.
As Magic pointed out in the chat, that the Lancers can upgrade to AT guns and helicopters. I always love that ability for mounted units to upgrade into these air-mounted units, these air units.
Yeah.
If only that worked in real life, that would be an awesome show.
That's really not any worse than when you take something like a galleon or frigate and all of a sudden it is a metal naval unit that is many times its size and capacity.
That's just known as the genie effect. The leader of the civilization found a magic lamp, and the genie granted them 3 wishes, and their first wish was that they would be able to upgrade these units ad infinitum until the end of time. So
more like they had to make a giant lamp out of the gold it costs.
Well, you're turning like an actual person into a boat and then making it travel across the ocean.
That's right, so. Whip those boats out. You'll feel like a fighter jet made of biceps. Literally.
Get out your spreadsheets and puddle jumpers being those little cars, or the economics of Civ from Pyrate, who was a past guest on the show. Almost every 4X game uses the same basic idea that your economy depends on controlling more resources and people. It's a supply side view of economics, and I'd like to see a game built around a demand side view, quote unquote. And then if you look in the thread, there's the comparison, for instance, of England and Japan being, the small island nations with few natural resources, and in Civ, they tend not to be as powerful as, say, those that are based in Africa, whereas in the quote unquote real world, we're flipping it. So that's a very brief summary of that. Continuing, quote, the only thing even close to this in Civilization are the specialists. They live in the city, so it doesn't matter how many tiles the city controls. As long as you feed them, you can have indefinitely many. However, since their food cost is high, you typically have most of your population still working the tiles as farmers and miners. It's very strange to model an economy that way, since very few people in an industrialized nation are going to be farmers or miners. Almost every job these days would qualify as a merchant in Civ terms. You can't even transfer food between your own cities. For me personally, the specialists are one of the most fun parts of the game. I'd like to see a game that focuses more on them and less on acquiring more resources. So, for example, instead of having cities produce everything like they do in Civ, cities would be simply trade centers, more like real life. Everything would be produced from the surrounding land and shipped to the cities to be sold or used. There would be a limit on how much can be traded in one city, and you'd have to upgrade the city marketplace to increase their limit, so some cities could specialize as trade centers. Quote-unquote talks about this being a bit more realistic, but also fun for a game, quote unquote, and references Seven Kingdoms is the only game that he was able to come across that was comparable to this, but just had a ridiculous amount of micromanagement.
Wow, just wow. I mean, he's essentially asking for a different game. The tile basis of the Empire is kind of the design mechanic of Civilization. And every single one in the series has had, worked tiles be the highest, the highest draw in terms of Empire management and resources and everything else. Civ 5 already is on the weak side in terms of that because they reduced the tile yields and made specialists stronger. It's not like it's a bad idea or anything, but he's essentially asking for an entirely different game. It's not something that really fits well within the scope of the design of Civilization or what makes Civilization fun. That's not to say you couldn't make a very fun game with a demand-side focus. It just doesn't make sense to make that a Civ game, particularly.
Yeah, but even keeping the focus on tiles, this post brings new cool idea. For instance, I think it's I don't know if I say it right, Ishnarsh, which talks about the way population increase. Right now, the population increase is based on food, which doesn't really make sense, and you can change the way this is modeling without keeping tiles, and I think that there are also good ideas brought by this post, like the way resources could evolve into manufactured products, bringing more gold or more luxuries, or I don't know, but I think there are good ideas in this post.
Oh, certainly. There are definitely good ideas, both in the original post and in the responses to the post throughout the thread. And as you mentioned, some of the things like tiles evolving, that's already been done in Civ. It would be nice to have some decision-making dynamic back in that regard, since we certainly don't have it in Civ 5 right now.
Yeah.
And a lot of if you're not changing the fundamental game, there's a lot of things that could definitely be looked at. And certainly the growth rate of cities is one of the limiting factors that makes city sprawl so much stronger than growing up cities, is because it's costing exponentially more food to grow cities. And if you change the mechanic in some way, that might actually help address that as well. So there's definitely some potential in terms of the ideas provided in the thread.
Yeah, I agree.
I read this opening post, and similar to what's already been said, we're talking about a completely different game or a complete reimagining of Civ. And on the one hand, he talks about, where is it here with regards to miners? Here we go. It's very strange to model an economy that way with people working as farmers and miners, since very few people in an industrialized nation are going to be farmers and miners. And if you actually get to the later game, just in terms of how much time is actually passing in between turns, you get to the later game, you can potentially be in the modern era longer than you're going to be in earlier eras when more time is passing in between turns. But if you look at starting out at the ancient era at 4000 BCE, and you think about just how much time you're going to spend, and the whole span of history looking at the bigger picture, to me, and it was mentioned by Bibor in terms of how in Beyond the Sword, the modern era economics, where you're getting into, Phil already touched on it as well, about replacing mines and farms with cottages and windmills, and the introduction of corporations and the like. On the whole, I think that if we were able to bring something like that back into Civilization 5 that was already mentioned, I think we would have a nice balance between economies that were, pre-industrial, to use a very general kind of cutoff point in terms of kind of a before and after, pre-industrial and post-industrial. And Bibor, kind of also what you were saying too, Raz, talked about the advantage of one particular empire that perhaps was able to specialize, and they were able to produce a particular resource, and then they would be able to produce a resource that maybe a larger empire wouldn't be able to, or not as effectively, be able to trade that and then get what they need from the larger empire, and vice versa. Kelvin in the thread also said that there's no need to make production portable, because he talked about food not being able to be portable, as gold already serves this purpose quite well. Well, certainly in Civ 5.
was going to say gold's not very nutritious.
But you know what is iron, because we need that in our diet.
Right.
But all right, so perhaps on this topic, on the economics of Civ, one of our earlier topics, or why in the heck are you still doing this show at all? We're going to invite Majin onto the call. Been a past guest on PolyCast and RevCast, and welcome to PolyCast episode 111.
Thanks for having me.
First off, preface, we are now into our open mic segment, formerly Mailbag.
Promotion unit upgrade. I actually missed some of that just because my headset was being a little cranky. But did you guys cover the fact that horsemen pretty much should be put back the way they were, at least as far as city attacks? I don't think it was in my thread, but one of the ideas that have been tossed around quite a bit, and you may have talked about this, is that instead of horsemen having the negative attack versus cities, they should actually use that for walls. Basically, if the city has a wall, then they would have the negative attack versus cities. Because frankly, a wide open, simple city really is a target for horsemen, and always has been. It's only when walls start getting involved that things made it a lot harder for the horsemen.
To answer your question, when we were talking about that thread, we didn't get into that particular with regards to the horsemen. Phil and I had a little discussion on it with regards to horsemen going from 12 strength down to 10, but we didn't get into the particular with regards to the city combat penalty and the walls suggestion. So no, that's a new wrinkle.
Okay, well, at least that's my opinion, and I share it. Somebody else came up with the idea, but it really makes sense. Let the walls deal with negative attack versus cities versus, horsemen always suck versus cities, even if it's newly planted and has nothing there. Just makes it slightly more balanced. So, I mean, from the thread, there's a couple other things I don't know if you talked about, especially with the pikemen. This plus 100% versus mounted units is just too painful. You can have a pikeman sit there nicely fortified and take out a cavalry unit, which...
Yes, we did this.
The base attack of the cavalry unit is 2.5 times the pikeman, but this pikeman, which comes so much earlier, can just wipe it out. It makes no sense. I mean, who as a cavalry charge would even, run into a bunch of sticks when they've got guns? Which is kind of the point of cavalry. So I think also one of the things that came up there was either chop that bonus in half down to plus 50% to at least make it on par with knights, given that pikemen always have defensive bonuses based on the terrain. So you can easily hit the same defensive bonuses a cavalry would have as for attack, but at least it wouldn't be overpowered. And well, in my fun super units section down below, I mean, seriously, that plus 100%, that transfers into riflemen, then infantry, then infantry. I mean, seriously, you can have 100 CS unit versus mounted because of that. And as for lancers, that penalty to defense, it's got to go when it gets upgraded. I've seen a 30 combat strength city take out a lancer in one shot, and the lancer was in full health. It just makes them way too fragile, especially when you upgrade them to helicopters and AT guns. Other than that, sounds good so far.
No, so far. The translation, you've peaked, you only have down to go. Well, geez.
Well, no, it's doing well. I slept in and totally forgot about the show. I'm sorry.
So you say you're sorry. You will demonstrate you are sorry by being early for the next show. Okay.
Always ready for the next show.
One thing I was wondering was whether the walls demotion for mounted units would count for like gunpowder mounted units, like cavalry.
Well, it probably should, just because it's the unit type. And again, we don't want to give the devs too much credit for getting everything perfect if they make a change. So, given that they are on horses, running around, with rifles, a wall's still going to stop you. And really, that's what cannons are for anyways.
It's kind of ridiculous that gunpowder units ignored walls ever. Like, you can't fire a bullet from, like, rifleman times through a foot of stone, or even like a half a foot of stone consistently and hit somebody and do lethal damage. You cannot. The only thing that's getting that down is cannon fire or some kind of siege, which, you have available earlier. And you can use cannons or whatever, and that would make sense. Okay, cannons can blow down walls. Some walls that will hold up better than others, but whatever. I mean, walls can at least be defeated that way, but you cannot fire through walls. Even with most modern weapons, you can't just shoot through a stone wall. It doesn't work. In terms of odd modern rifles, I should say. I mean, obviously other modern weapons could make short work, but just take like an 47 or something and spraying it at like a 1 foot wall, you're not going to do a whole lot. Certainly, you won't completely negate that cover.
No, you're going
to still take cover behind a wall.
You might put a few holes in it, but it should be easy for people just behind something else. This may sound like a complaint, but people need to really relook at the basics. There's quite a bit where people think that all the deity level assumptions are just too strong to overcome. And there was definitely a few threads about it. But I found the funniest one was where people were complaining that the starting technology was just too strong in comparison to the happiness or anything else.
Oh, yeah, that was ridiculous.
Yeah, I think I saw you posting in there, too. This is over on Civ Fanatics. And I just got to say, their starting technologies go away pretty quickly. You can easily surpass that. Getting past their happiness bonus or their gold bonus or their science bonus.
Or their production bonus.
Yeah.
There are 11 billion stupid bonuses up to and including against you. Yeah.
It's like he picked one of their most minor bonuses possible and it's like, I can't play deity because of this bonus. Like, oh my god, if only you knew.
Yeah.
But people still beat it, so it's not like it's undoable.
Do it all the time.
How do great people points scale up in Civ 5? That's something I kind of want to know, especially from the standpoint of providing quality information on the show. Like, is it similar to Civ 4 where each additional one costs more great person points to attain it?
In that respect, yes. The way that it works is that you have a counter. It starts at 100. Each of the great people points have their own counters, and they never get reset unless you get one. And each city has its own great people point counters. So you can have multiple cities working on great scientists or great engineers or whatever, and every time you get one, it resets the counter only for that one specific great person and increases all of them across all cities by another 100. So you start at 100, then it goes to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Okay, so just to get an example of what you're going, say you're running scientists in 2 cities, and you are like 50 in one city and you just hit 100 in the other. You'll fall to 0 in the second city, or you'll stay at 50, but now you have to get to 200.
Yeah, you'll stay at 50 and then have to go to 200.
All right, that's how it is in Civ 4. But then after you pop your first great scientist, say you're running a great engineer in another city, the great engineer will stay at 100, or that will also go to 200?
It'll also go to 200.
Okay, so it's the same. They didn't change that at all then.
Yeah, it didn't seem to be. Although Babylon seems to really abuse it. Because of their bonus where you double the great scientist points that you generate, especially after the patch where they took away the 2 library slots, I can still get upwards of 66 great scientist points per turn. 66, I can get my 12th great scientist in less time than it would take to get a research agreement done. So it's fairly solid. I also found that the great scientists are the hardest ones to get, just because obviously they've nerfed it. But other than that, yeah, great engineers are so much easier to get. And the core of the philosophy is to stack your great people points. So you want one city trying to generate great scientists, one city trying to generate great engineers, one city trying to do yada yada. Unless you're doing cultural, then you want everybody to be pushing cultural to get the artists.
Well, thanks very much for the call-in and then being in the chat once again, and I'm sure we'll have you back on.
Okay, well, great. Thanks for having me. Thanks for checking out my threads, even when I'm not on. It's always good to know that people are reading.
Yes, your payment was processed successfully.
Very good.
All right, I imagine.
Good night.
Call in today. In North America, the number is 301-637-7659.
That's 301-637-POLY.
In Europe, 44121-288-7659. That's 44121-288-POLY.
You can Skype us at the PolyCast or email us at thepolycast@gmail.com.
The only thing worse than being talked about is not being talked about.
For more information on PolyCast,
our sibling shows Modcast and Revcast,
or about PolyCast in general,
log on to the series' official website at
thepolycast.net. Catherine of Russia being anti-Oprah. What?
It's an eye catcher, at least.
Well, topic was started by John the Bastard. Hey, you have the family-friendly start.
Off to a good start already, yes.
Said he's played about 156 hours worth of Civ 5 now, and he's witnessed some really funny AI stunts by all the leaders. But he feels like he's gotten to know them and their personalities. So he goes down his list here of different things, and Washington, the passive-aggressive of America. Just, he'll take a beating, but then he'll also come around and he'll try and get all of his friends on against you for the whole rest of the game. You know, he's like, oh, okay, you beat me, I capitulate, and then he's probably one of those guys who goes around and denounces everyone.
Yeah, we've got Montezuma, the psychologically imbalanced.
Inclusion conducting foreign policy like a 4-year-old. That sums it up right there.
Yeah, that's pretty mean to all the 4-year-olds out there, actually.
Perhaps. They're usually a little more rational.
Only a little.
Napoleon, the supremely diminutive of France.
Hey.
I'm just poking fun at his stature, because truth be told, there really isn't anything diminutive about his gameplay at all.
One for England is good, but we'll just move on.
For Bismarck, he always makes the most erroneous requests and asks like the world truly does revolve around him. Why, hello there, neighbor. Why don't you put on servant's robe and massage my calloused, wrinkly feet? Ew, gross, no.
Okay, then.
Alexander, the city-state thief of Greece.
Yeah.
Like a toddler with a bad diaper rash and no father figure in his life. Well, okay.
There's some good writing here. Reasonably creative.
And Catherine is apparently the anti-Oprah because instead of giving you trips and free cars, she gives you an army up to you know what.
Or I also like Catherine would buy you a car and then call you out to the driveway, set it on fire, and make you watch it burn. Oh, that sounded a bit like singing, and Phil was able to get away with it. Oh, all right.
Oh.
All right, everyone quickly mute Dan, and we'll continue on with PolyCast.
Dan who?
Thank you for listening to PolyCast episode 111. Like 101, it does not matter if you reverse the order, and that is very important to Dan. I am the co-host MeInTeam, and I am joined by Daniel Quick.
I denounce no one and everyone at the same time.
Q&L.
Bye-bye.
Makahlua.
I denounce Pittsburgh. Go Green Bay.
And guest co-host Raskolnikov.
Ciao, ciao.
Listeners, you might have been thinking that there's an echo on that, but actually that's not true. That's just how we speak when we want to.
It's just our special techno effect.
It's like we're all around you.
We're just moving that fast. You know, it's like those cartoons where you're moving so fast it appears to be multiple people. Yeah, that's us.
We're the Flash of podcasts.
Flash in the pan?
Oh, you hear that in the background? That's us moving right now.
Yeah, this is Need for Speed.
Also not a bad gaming series, but that would be for a completely different show.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Back to meditating.
Yay.
Record date February 5th, 2011. Civilization 4 and Civilization 5 sound clips. Copyright Take-Two Interactive. Copyright Civilized Communication at civcom.net.